Good morning, everybody. Honored guests, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first introduce myself. I am Dr. Tariq Taha, Technical Assistant at the OIE Sub-Regional Representation in Abu Dhabi. Welcome to the inter-regional webinar on Rift Valley fever, scientific advances in surveillance, risk mitigation and control. And we are also proud to announce that this webinar is organized jointly by the OIE Sub-Regional Representation Office in Abu Dhabi, the OIE Sub-Regional Representation in East Africa, and the OIE Middle East Representation in collaboration with our colleague in FAO Sub-Regional Office for GCC, States, and Yemen. As it is of importance to stick to the scheduled time and we have a limited time for presentation, we will not be able to take more than one question after each presentation. You can also use the chat to send your question, and we and also devote a last session for the question and answer. And we promise to provide the answers for the rest of question to you later. And audience also is kindly requested to and encouraged to participate in a poll that will be conducted during the last session. The purpose is to provide opportunity to you in highlighting significant issues that you think deserve to be on the agenda of our upcoming RVF workshop that is planned to be in 2022, which we are looking forward to be a face-to-face meeting, inshallah. Now, let me introduce Dr. Mohammed Ali Al-Hawsani, the OIE Sub-Regional Representative in Abu Dhabi, in a welcome speech. Dr. Hawsani.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Our honored guests, colleagues, valued speakers, and respected attendees. It's a great pleasure to welcome all of you to share your knowledge and vast experience and to enhance our mental horizon and develop better understanding of the basic aspects of Rift Valley fever, combating and control as one of the important zoonoses and TADs. We are lucky to have assembled a broad and diverse group of well-informed participants for this webinar, as we strongly believe that the success of any workshop or activity of this type depends on the quality of the people involved to make the event breeding groups for good, active and constructive discussion. And that one of the things that we are really trying to accomplish here. I wish you all an interesting and fruitful webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Mohammed. Now the floor is for Dr. Samuel Wakasama, the OIE Sub-Regional Representative in Africa, and extended welcome speech also, or welcome notes. Dr. Samuel, please.
Thank you very much, Tariq. Dear Dino from Sukuti, Mohammed Al-Hawsani, my colleagues, it's a great pleasure to welcome you to the Middle East Inter-Africa Regional Webinar on Rift Valley fever. That's for scientific advances, surveillance, risk mitigation, and control. As you know, Rift Valley fever is a viral zoonotic disease that primarily affects domesticated wild ruminants, that's cattle, sheep, goats, and camels. It can also cause illness in people through contact with the body fluids or tissues of infected animals or through bites from infected mosquitoes. RVF has been reported in Africa and is many times and is zoonotic in most of the Horn of African countries, especially those that exposed to the Middle East. Outbreaks of RVF have been major societal impacts, including significant economic losses and trade reductions. Moreover, it causes severe disease in humans and animals, posing threats to both human well-being and animal health. Due to lack of scientific treatment or licensed human vaccine against RVF and its high epidemic potential, the WHO lists RVF virus as pathogen. However, different types of vaccines are available for use in animals, and several candidate vaccines are currently being developed and evaluated. In May 2004, the FAO and OIE launched a joint initiative under the Global Framework for the Progressive Control of Transboundary Animal Disease following their agreement. One of its key objectives is to protect the health of animals and ensure safe and fair trade in animal and animal products worldwide, ensuring transparency in global animal disease situation. Under the GFTAD's initiative, several activities are recognized to address Rift Valley fever as a priority disease, posing significant risk to livestock trade and food security. This webinar is one of those activities. The webinar is also organized under the One Health approach, and as you've been told by my colleague, FAO, OIE, and other partners, and therefore it corresponding to the partners from WHO and Africa CDC and UNEP, along with the respective government, public health and environmental health professionals and institutes who have been going to be contribute to this webinar. The aim of the webinar is to discuss the recent technical developments in interregional prevention, risk management, and control of RVF. It will also present and discuss self-declaration of free status and identify key issues addressed in the face-to-face interregional conference of 2022, which my colleague just mentioned about. The target group for this webinar is the member states that are affected with the RVF, also with countries from the Gulf Cooperation Council and Egypt, as well as Yemen, totaling to about 43 countries participating that represents animal health, environmental health, and human health. In addition, representatives from intergovernment and regional AP organizations, collaborating centers, and partners have also been invited for this webinar. Colleagues, once again, I welcome you to this webinar, and I wish you a very fruitful deliberation. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam, for your nice words. And now additional welcome words will be delivered by Dr. Dino Franciscotti, the coordinator of FAO Sub-Regional Office for Gulf Cooperation Council States and Yemen. Please, Dr. Dino, the floor is yours. Dr. Dino.
Thank you. I was having issues with the mute function. Thank you very much.
No. Let me. Additional welcome words will be delivered by Dr. Dino, the coordinator of FAO Sub-Regional Office for the Gulf Cooperation Council States and Yemen. Please,
Thank you.
Dr. Dino, the floor is yours. Welcome. We are sorry for any.
That's all right. That's all right. First of all, thank you. Great to be here with you, Mohammed Al-Hussani, Samuel Hussama. Great to be together on this event. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues from OIE, from FAO, from countries participating. I am very pleased and honored to welcome you all in this interregional webinar on Rift Valley fever, scientific advances in surveillance, risk mitigation and control, which is organized under the FAO OIE Global Framework for Progressive Control of Transboundary Animal Diseases. I would also like to underline that today is the World Zoonosis Day, an annual opportunity to raise awareness of those diseases that can spread between animals and people, and to celebrate global activities taking place to minimize the risk in the future. We are passing through an unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic, and the world is continuing to fight the pandemic. This has exposed the fragility of our health and food systems. Last year, the world commemorated the 75th anniversary of FAO and of the UN at large. And we organized a One Health, Food Safety and Sustainable Food Systems Dialogue which brought together 18 countries. Millions of people cope each day with chronic hunger, and more than 135 million are trapped in extreme hunger and highly vulnerable to COVID-19 impacts on food security, in addition to other diseases. To end hunger, achieve food security, improve nutrition, and promote sustainable livestock supply chains, we need to highlight the importance of achieving food safety and sustainable food systems. Ladies, gentlemen, today several studies show that 60% of human pathogens are of animal origin. 5 new human diseases appear every year, and 3 of them are of animal origin. 3/4 of the newly emerging animal diseases can be transmitted to humans. 80% of pathogens that can be bioterrorism are of animal origin. Zoonotic diseases, which are those diseases that can spread between animals and humans, represent a direct threat to public health, animal health, and production and productivity, as well as food trade and food systems. Rift Valley fever is a viral zoonosis that primarily affects domestic and wild ruminants and can cause severe disease in humans and animals. Rift Valley fever poses threats to human well-being, animal health and welfare. So outbreaks of Rift Valley fever can have major societal impacts, including significant economic losses and livestock trade reductions. It has the propensity for rapid spread, irrespective of the national borders, causing major disruptions to regional and international trade when it occurs. Today, this inter-regional webinar on Rift Valley fever, scientific advances in surveillance, risk mitigation and control, brings together experts, scientists, and governmental and non-governmental agencies, as well as stakeholders from Africa and the Middle East, and therefore it is very timely. I sincerely believe that this webinar and the discussions arising from it would bring out scientific advances, innovations, and technical developments as evidence-based, so that decision makers can use it to plan its prevention, risk management and control, foster and operationalize an integrated One Health approach in the 2 regions in tackling zoonosis. Let us all gather our forces to support One Health approach in the fight against zoonotic diseases, to control current zoonosis, and to prevent future pandemics in this complex, challenging time. I take the opportunity to thank you, all co-organizers under the FAO-OIE Global Framework for Progressive Control of Transboundary Animal Diseases. And thank you all for listening. I wish you all the best. I will look forward to the positive outcomes from this seminar. Once again, thank you. Shukran. Merci.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Deno, for the constructive words. Our first speaker is Dr. Ibrahim Ben Ahmed Qasim, the General Director of the General Directorate of Animal Resources Services, Ministry of Environment, Water and Agriculture in KSA, Saudi Arabia. Chairman Dr. Ibrahim also chairs the regional steering committee of the GF-TATS for the Middle East and supervises the vector control program. And he is also the representative of the Arab Organization for Agriculture Development, the AOAD, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Dr. Ibrahim will shed some light over about the overview of epidemiological situation of RVF in Middle East region. Dr. Ibrahim, the floor is yours. Welcome.
جميعا انه اول حاله لمرض حمى الوادي المتوسط في منطقه الاخدود العظيم او ما يعرف بوادي ريفت بدوله كينيا. وبالرغم من ذلك انه هذا لا يعني بالضروره ان مصدر المرض هو كينيا، وبالاخص انه سبق رصدت ووجدت تقارير في عام 1913 تفيد بوجود مرض مماثل، وهذا يرجح أن المرض متواجد منذ فترة طويلة ولكن لم يتم التعرف عليه أو حتى على مسببه. قد يكون منتشرا في عدد كبير من الدول الأفريقية خصوصا جنوب الصحراء الكبرى، حيث تواجد الظروف والبيئة المهيئة لوجود وتكاثر النواقل الحشرية للمرض، بالأخص الناقل الفيروسي اللي هو ايديس ايجيبتاي. جوائح للمرض في فترة من 1931 حتى 1975 في كل من تنزانيا وجنوب أفريقيا وزيمبابوي وزامبيا والسودان. في عام 1977 حدث أول رصد لهذا المرض في شمال الصحراء الكبرى في مصر، كما حدث الرصد لعدد الاندلاعات في الصومال والسنغال وموريتانيا وأوغندا. ويعتبر الآن المرض منتشرا في معظم دول القارة الأفريقية بالرغم من عدم وجود بلاغات لاندلاعات وبائية في بعض الدول، إلا أن هنالك تقارير تفيد بوجود عينات إيجابية مصرية بين قطعان المواشي. أما في عام 2000 تم رصد أول اندلاعة للمرض خارج القارة الأفريقية في كل من اليمن والجزء الجنوبي الغربي في المملكة العربية السعودية. وبالبحث الجيني للفيروس المسبب لتلك الاندلاعة والتقصي المصلي وجدت دلائل ومؤشرات تفيد باحتمال وجود حالات بين المواشي فترة قبل هذه الاندلاعة في عام 1998، وبالأخص أن الفيروس المسبب لتلك الحالات مرتبط جينيا بالفيروس المسبب لاندلاعة في شرق أفريقيا تحديدا في كينيا خلال الفترة في عام 1998 و 1996. مع بداية القرن الحادي والعشرين تعددت اندلاعات المرض في عدد كثير من الدول. قد لوحظ اتساع رقعتها الجغرافية بداية بظهور المرض في عام 2000 مثل ما ذكرنا في اليمن والسعودية. لوحظ كذلك حدوث اندلاعات في كل من الصومال وكينيا في 2006 و2007، في تنزانيا والسودان في 2020 و2008 و2007، وجنوب أفريقيا وموريتانيا في 2010، وجنوب أفريقيا ونامبيا في 2009 و2011، وبريطانيا والسنغال والنيجر وأنغولا وأوغندا وغامبيا خلال هذه الفترات. هذا يدل على اتساع رقعة اندلاعات المرض. أما التحاليل الوبائية لهذه الاندلاعة تغير النمط الوبائي للمرض، حيث أن المرض معروف تاريخيا بارتباطه بإصابته للمواشي بشكل أساسي، بينما تكون الحالات البشرية غير ملاحظة، وذلك بنسبة 80% من الإصابات. لكن الاندلاعات الأخيرة أصبح المرض أكثر خطورة ملحوظة في البشر. كذلك أظهرت الدراسات الوبائية أن معدلات هطول الأمطار ما زالت تلعب دورا مهما في ظهور الاندلاعات. الدراسات الوبائية التي تم إجراءها أظهرت أن حركة المواشي غير المتحكم به أثناء الاندلاعات داخل الدول المصابة وبين الدول تلعب دور وعاملا أساسيا في انتقال المرض، خصوصا في المناطق أو المواقع الجديدة التي لم يكن يعرف فيها هذا المرض. ومما سبق يتضح أن خطر ظهور اندلاعات للمرض حمى الوادي المتصدع هو في زيادة مستمرة، سواء لمناطق جديدة لم يظهر فيها هذا المرض من قبل أو في نفس المناطق، كما يظهر ذلك في زيادة حدة المرض في البشر المصابين به. من هذا المنطلق أن تحليل عوامل الخطر المرتبطة بظهور المرض وانتشاره يجب تأخذ الدور الأكبر في المرحلة القادمة من حيث البحوث التطبيقية ووضع الخطط التنفيذية لتلافي تلك العوامل. ومن خلال ما ذكر يمكن أن نجمل ونلخص أهم أركان مكافحة هذا المرض داخليا وبين الدول في عدد من النقاط. أولا، كفاءة أداء الخدمات البيطرية بالدولة، والتي تعتبر خطا أساسيا في أعمال المكافحة، وذلك من خلال تنفيذ عدد من العمليات أهمها التشخيص الميداني والتخبري المبكر للحالات المرضية للسيطرة على حركة المواشي داخل الدولة. كما تلعب كفاءة الخدمات المحجرية دورا محجري مهم جدا في منع دخول المرض من الدول المجاورة، وبالأخص في حال عدم الالتزام من بعض الدول بالإبلاغ للمنظمات الدولية في حال وجود حركة بين هذه الدول نتيجة التهريب أو التنقل الحر كالرعي المتبادل بين الدول المجاورة. ثانيا، وجود شبكة فعالة تبادل المعلومات الوبائية بين الدول وشفافية إبلاغ المنظمات الدولية قبل الدول التي بها حالات إصابة تلعب دورا مهما في رفع درجة التأهب لدى الدول المختلفة والإعداد المسبق، مما يساعد في منع ظهور المرض والتصدي للمرض حال ظهوره. ومن أهم هذه الأركان كذلك ثالثا، كفاءة أعمال نظم الإنذار المبكر، حيث أن لها دورا هاما في تقييم درجة خطر ظهور جوائح هذا المرض، حيث وجد ظهور اندلاعات مرضية مرتبطة ارتباطا وثيقا بظهور النينو أو ارتفاع معدلات الأمطار وازدياد الغطاء النباتي. وقد تم في المملكة العربية السعودية الاستفادة من هذا الدور في أعمال الإنذار المبكر والاستفادة من معلومات الأقمار الصناعية في رفع درجة التأهب للمرض، وذلك ما حدث في عام 2015 بعد ورود معلومات من الوكالة الفضائية ناسا، مما يعكس أهمية دور الإنذار المبكر في مكافحة مرض حمى الوادي المتصدع. رابعا، من أهم هذه الأركان درجة تطبيق مفهوم الصحة الواحدة. بالرغم من أن معظم الحالات البشرية للمرض تمر بدون وجود أعراض مميزة له، إلا أن في كثير من الدول التي يتوطن بها هذا المرض يلاحظ وجود حالات بشرية في المستشفيات يعتبر من المؤشرات الهامة على حدوث اندلاعه، وخصوصا مع عدم ظهور العلامات المرضية المعروفة والمميزة للمرض بالمواشي، نسبة لوجود مناعة جزئية لهذه المواشي تحول طبعا عن دور أو ظهور الأعراض أو نتيجة لعدم تقصي المرض من قبل الجهات البيطرية في الدولة. هذا يسبب إلى عدم إبلاغ المربين بوجود المرض بين المواشي أو نتيجة لضعف الخدمات البيطرية داخل هذه الدولة. خامسا، وجود خطط استجابة سريعة، حيث أن وجود خطة استجابة للطوارئ وتنفيذ تجارب محاكاة في تلك الخطط داخل الدولة أو بين دول المنطقة المجاورة يلعب دورا مهما في منع انتشار هذا المرض، خصوصا في الاندلاعات وإخمادها مبكرا. من أهم مكونات خطط الاستجابة السريعة والتي تعتبر من أهم عوامل نجاح مكافحة الاندلاع وجود بنك للقاحات أو آلية واضحة للحصول على لقاحات فعالة ضد المرض بشكل سريع بمجرد التأكد من أن حالات الإصابة إضافة لوجود كوادر ومختبرات مجهزة تقصي حدة وانتشار الإصابة مع وجود الموارد الكافية لذلك. وهنا يلعب الجانب الاقتصادي عامل مهم في مدى جاهزية كل دولة تصدي للاندلاع. ومن خلال الدور الذي تقوم به اللجنة التوجيهية التيتات في الشرق الأوسط يتضح جليا أنه ولمكافحة هذا المرض بشكل أكثر فاعلية يجب تبني استراتيجية مشتركة بين الدول الإقليمية لمكافحة المرض على النحو التالي. أولا، وضع آلية للتقصي وتحديد عوامل الخطر المرتبطة بظهور المرض بكل دولة وما لكل دولة من خصوصية في نواقل المرض وارتباطها بالوضع البيئي في كل دولة إضافة لوضع الثروة الحيوانية داخل هذه الدول وأنماط تربيتها المختلفة. ثانيا، ضرورة تطوير نظم الإنذار المبكر بدول الإقليم وانخراط المنظمات الإقليمية والدولية في ذلك مع اقتراح تكوين شبكة فاعلة لتبادل المعلومات الوبائية للمرض بين الدول بشكل يضمن السرعة والشفافية العالية. ثالثاً، ضرورة تفعيل الشراكة بين الدول والمنظمات الإقليمية والدولية المعنية لوضع خطط طوارئ واستجابة سريعة لمواجهة الاندلاعات المختلفة مع وضع خطط تدريب الكوادر الفنية بكل دولة على تنفيذ تلك الخطط من خلال تجارب المحاكاة. وأخيراً، تطوير الخدمات البيطرية لكل دولة من الدول إضافة لتطوير نظم دعم ساند بين الدول لتغطية احتياجات الدولة التي تظهر بها الإصابة من توفير اللقاحات اللازمة ومستلزمات التقصي ومكافحة لهذا المرض. شكرا لكم.
شكرا Dr. Ibrahim for this extensive and really rich slideshow about the epidemiological situation of the RVF in the Middle East region. I need to notify our our valued speakers that if they want to present, they can't handle the presentation from their side because we have a technical issue that for the sound. Okay. Let us now proceed to our next speaker, Dr. Paolo Tizzani. He will speak about the overview of the same topic about the epidemiological situation of RVF in Africa region, with a special reference to Africa region. Paolo Tizzani is a veterinary epidemiologist at the World Animal Health Information and Analysis Department, and he will go to discuss the usage of new OIE WAHIS version in strengthening the surveys and the data collection issues. Dr. Tizzani, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sharing my screen. Can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Perfect.
Yes. Okay.
Voilà. So thank you very much for inviting me. The idea of this presentation is to provide an overview of the epidemiological situation of Rift Valley fever as reported by OIE member countries. So I think Dr. Kazim already provided a very deep overview of the situation of Rift Valley fever. I will, my focus will be more on the Rift Valley fever situation as reported by our member since 2005. So here is a brief overview of my presentation. As we are speaking about Rift Valley fever as reported by member country, I think it's very important to provide also some important news on or some information about our new reporting system, the OIE WAHIS, that was recently launched. Then I will go to, I will present the epidemiological situation of the Rift Valley fever as reported during the period 2005-2021, presenting the distribution of the disease, the trend of countries reporting disease present since 2005, the trend in quantitative data, and after that I will go to present the recent distribution. When I say recent, I mean distribution of reporting of Rift Valley fever by member countries in the period 2020-2021 and the currently ongoing events. And then I will provide a very quick overlook on some preventive and control measures reported by members. Finally, as the OI is not only a passive system receiving information from countries, but we are also doing some active search activity to try to improve as much as possible the reporting of members. I will also present our active search activity specifically related to Rift Valley fever. So starting from the beginning and from the OI WAHIS, as you know, recently we have launched our new OI WAHIS system. The idea to launch the new system was because the old system was really outdated, and the idea was to create a system user-friendly, intuitive, a system that allows, from one side, members to report information in an easy way and an efficient way, but also from the other side to allow users to access this information very easily. So we improve quite a lot the new system. We improve the spatial, the display of spatial data. So we improve all the mapping system. And we also improved, and we are working on the possibility to make the system, to improve the connectivity of the system. So to improve the interoperability of our system with other systems. This is really with the idea to allow as much as possible the diffusion of data and the exposure of data reported by our members. The idea is to facilitate reporting, but also to promote the use of OI data. Timeline, so all the projects start in 2016. And as you may know, in March, at the beginning of March this year, we launched the first version of the system. And so with the new system now, countries, the module available in the new system for the moment are the module for sending immediate notification follow-up reports and the 6-monthly reports. So all that is related to the early warning system and to the monitoring system. But we are working on further releases to allow countries also to report other kind of information. As I said, we improved several functionality. Here is just one, the main one is the new mapping system. Having an efficient mapping system allows countries to report information in a more accurate way, meaning providing quite a lot of details, but also, as I said, to display the same information in a very dynamic and efficient way. And this is just a comparison between what was our mapping application before and what is how it looks like the current one. And also very important is not only to report and display information, but also to give member countries, but also other users, the possibility to access this data in an easy way. So we built several dashboards in a new system that allows users to directly access, download, and visualize the data in an efficient way. And most of the data that I will show you in the next slides on Rift Valley fever are taken directly from the new system. So I really invite you to explore the new platform. So after this introduction, I will just provide you some information about the Rift Valley fever situation. 2005-2021. Again, as reported by members. So all the data displayed in the next slides are related to the information contained in the OIUARCI system and are linked to the reporting by members. So this is a cumulative map for the period 2005-2021, meaning that this is really accumulating in a unique map all the information reported since 2005. In red, you can see the countries reporting the disease present at least once. In yellow, the country reported is suspected. For the country reported is absent is green, and then if no information in light blue. As a summary, since 2005, 32 countries in the region reported the disease present at least once, with the distribution that you can see on the map. And since 2005, so just to clarify the difference between this map and the previous one, this map accumulates information coming from 6 monthly reports, that in other words are our monitoring system, are the information that countries report each 6 months to update the disease situation for all the OIE listed diseases, including Rift Valley fever, while this map presents only the information reported through what we call the early warning system, so through immediate notification and follow-up reports that are on the contrary of the 6 monthly report, the reports that country provide to inform immediately about the occurrence of events. The map presents, so again, accumulation of outbreaks reported since 2005. In green, you can see the outbreaks resolved. In yellow, the outbreaks that are still ongoing, or outbreaks for countries that declare the disease is stable, and so the outbreaks stay open. The circle represents the occurrence of outbreaks in domestic animals that are the large part of all the outbreaks, and with the triangle, the occurrence of disease in wildlife. Again, as a summary, since 2005, countries reported through immediate notification and follow-up reports 911 outbreaks, and 15 countries reported information through immediate notification follow-up reports. So again, just to make a comparison with the previous map, 32 countries reports at least once the information of Rift Valley fever, but out of this, only 15 reported information through immediate notification, meaning through alert message, sending a notification to the OI. The difference between sending a notification and sending a monthly report is that immediate notification is sent as soon as an outbreak is detected. Sending to a 6 monthly report means that the information is updated each 6 months, so we're more delayed. Regarding the trend of countries reporting a disease present, so until now we have seen just a very static and cumulative map. This graph provides a bit more of context about the dynamic of reporting since 2005. So on this graph, you have the number of countries reporting the disease present by semester since 2005. So you can see very well the dynamic with some peaks in the number of countries reporting the disease present in 2008, and again another peak in 2018. On average, 9 countries reported the disease present each year. Again, speaking about trends, trends of quantitative data. This is the trend of outbreaks reported again since 2005 by our members. And we can see a peak in outbreaks reported in 2010 and a second minor peak in 2009. Since 2005, in our system, we have recorded more than around 1,300 outbreaks reported for Rift Valley fever. And this is a similar graph showing the evolution of outbreaks since, showing the evolution of quantitative data since 2005, and representing the number of cases, deaths, animal kill and dispose of, if available, and susceptible animals reported since 2005. As a summary, in the system, we have recorded 80,000, around 80,000 cases reported since 2005. Important to highlight that all these graphs and all even the map that I show you can be, since now with the new system, are directly available in the new public interface. So these data are accessible to everybody. Just a matter to filter the data set, and all this data can be directly not only visualized but also exported from the new system. Regarding the recent distribution of the disease, here is a similar map, a map similar to the one I showed before, but just highlighting the countries reporting the disease present during 2020 and 2021. These include mostly include countries reporting the disease through immediate notification and follow-up reports. And there are 9 countries reporting disease present in this period, or reporting present, or the reporting in the past the disease was stable in the country. And again, this is the distribution of recent outbreaks reported by member countries. As before, in green, outbreaks that are resolved, and in yellow, outbreaks that are still ongoing in the country. So we are Kenya that declared the event, the Valley fever event resolved on March 2021, while these other countries are still ongoing. The event, the Rift Valley fever event, is still ongoing. And here I just highlighted the date in which we received the last update from the country. The most recent one was from Madagascar on May 2021. Something else I consider was useful to share was, and it's another functionality that is available on the new interface, is to display the preventive control measures declared by member countries regarding Rift Valley fever. In the first map, I just highlighted countries reporting surveillance activity, active or passive surveillance activity. In this case, I just selected 4 different control measures that countries can report to the OIE related to Rift Valley fever. So the application of general surveillance, targeted surveillance, monitoring and screening, to display the surveillance capacity of the country as reported in OIE WACI. So in this case, you can see a higher surveillance capacity reported by members in the eastern part of the region. And here is highlighted the country reporting to carry out some official vaccination activity. There are very few countries that I'm not sure if these represent the reality or just lack in reporting by members. Finally, as you see, we have a wide performance platform to collect information by members. But what I would like to highlight is the OIE is not just receiving information in a passive way, but one of the main activity of my department is to also look in an active way for information, unofficial information that may sometimes are not reported by countries, or for which we need to ask countries on clarification. This means that since 2002, the OE is doing an active search activity for rumors. In the past, we did this activity in a very manual way, just looking, screening manually some media and website, etc. Since 2018, we implemented a more automatic search for unofficial information. Specifically, we are using the EIOS system. EIOS is an acronym standing for Epidemic Intelligence from Open Source. So this is a system, it's a project led by WHO to improve our capacity to actively detect if there is any news on West disease, in this case specifically on Rift Valley fever, that is circulating on the media, that need to be clarified with members in order to understand if it's a real news, or if there is a need for countries to notify, to report to the IA about some specific event. Just to provide you an idea of the capacity of the system, last year, this data, the statistics are referred to 2020. We screened with this platform around 100,000 news, and we have a dedicated search algorithm for Rift Valley fever that detected around 1,000 news that were subsequently verified during 2020. The idea is really each time we detect some news about Rift Valley fever circulating on the media, we verify the official information from country, and then we communicate with the country just to clarify the specific media news. And last but not least, we have also an active collaboration for early warning with the GLUES network. So it's a tripartite collaboration with FAO and WHO, also to exchange unofficial or confidential information and to have a better awareness of of some important events and news circulating that may need some clarification with our members. So to summarize this presentation, we have a new hierarchy system that is facilitating disease reporting by members, not only, but also data sharing. I think it's, in the case of Rift Valley fever, is very important to share as much as possible information coming from our members. Going to some of the data presented, the situation of the Rift Valley fever in the region show a very dynamic situation with some epidemic peak of, for example, of countries reported is present, 2008, 2018, for example. One important point, I think it's important to highlight, out of all the countries that declared the disease present since 2005, only a part of them are reporting disease through notification follow-up reports. Again, this means that only a part of them share this information through alert messages. This is really due to the epidemiological situation of the disease in the region. But yeah, in terms of early warning, this means that for some countries we have immediate information. For others, we need to wait the submission of the 6-monthly report. Some of the data highlighted also variable situation of country, disease surveillance capacity. And finally, I highlighted the importance of our epidemic intelligence activity, and country transparency, really sharing as much as possible information on Rift Valley fever to then inform the global community, our member countries, etc. And with that, I finish. I thank you very much.
Thanks, Paulo, for this very interesting show. It really reflects how to utilize the new advances and improvements for the OIE WAHIS in disease traceability and linking the genomic data with the epidemiological data to identify diseases. We have a question for you, a quick question that you mentioned that since 2005 there is 13006 outbreaks, and how do you define an outbreak? And how in its magnitude and its impact? And how okay. Sorry, Mark.
He's mute. Dr. Paulo, you are mute.
Oh, pardon. Sorry. Yeah, I was saying that regarding the definition of outbreak, we have the OIE share with all its member a notification procedure. In the notification procedure, we define each single aspect related to notification. And for the case of outbreaks, is defined as cases occurring in the same epidemiological unit. So it's up to veterinary services to define what they consider as an epidemiological unit, and all the cases occurring in the same epidemiological units are reported as a single outbreak.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. We can maybe we can have extensive comments and the discussion after the session. The final session will be for question and answer, and we can interact very directly with the audience. Thanks, Paulo, again for your very interesting show. And we are going to proceed to our third show about the advances in Rift Valley fever surveillance during epidemic and inter-epidemic periods, human, animal, and vector interfaces. This will be delivered by Dr. Peter Thompson, qualified as a veterinarian in 1990 and worked as a specialist in production of animal production before moving to epidemiology. Dr. Thompson also currently is a professor of veterinary epidemiology at Faculty of Veterinary Science, University of Pretoria, South Africa, under Stilport. And his main area of research is epidemiology of emerging and zoonotic diseases at livestock, wildlife, human interfaces, with a special interest in Rift Valley fever. Welcome, Dr. Thompson, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Right.
Clearly.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to present on this topic. So I'm going to be talking about Rift Valley fever surveillance during epidemic and inter-epidemic periods. And in this short presentation, I'm going to explain the importance of epidemiological context in the design of a surveillance strategy for Rift Valley fever, and the selection of appropriate tools depending on that context. I will point out what I consider to be the most sensitive or important surveillance tools to be considered in each context. And lastly, I will also touch on the importance of the links between surveillance and research. So very briefly, the simplified epidemiological cycle of Rift Valley fever, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. The main vertebrate hosts are domestic and wild ruminants. And during epidemic, or rather during endemic situations, the virus is transmitted between them mainly by culisine mosquitoes. In many areas, it's also thought that Rift Valley fever virus can be maintained during interepidemic periods by transferal transmission in floodwater breeding Aedes species. During epidemics, the cycle shifts towards circulation between vast numbers of Culex species mosquitoes, with possible spillover into humans and large numbers of domestic and wild ruminants being affected. Just another map, you've seen a few of them already. This one's from the WHO. And this is just to show that you can see that within countries and within regions, there are certain areas that are specifically more prone to epidemics. And this is where we tend to get large outbreaks with significant livestock and human mortality and morbidity. And it's in these areas that the highest risk exists for devastating outbreaks. And these are what I call the epidemic areas for Rift Valley fever. However, in many other areas, particularly in tropical, wet, low-lying coastal areas, for example, in coastal Mozambique and possibly also in tropical West Africa, you can get endemic Rift Valley fever circulation, sometimes at a very high level between vectors and susceptible hosts. And these are what I call the endemic areas for Rift Valley fever. And these areas are scattered probably throughout much of or most of sub-Saharan Africa. Of course, there's a lot of overlap. For example, there may be areas of endemicity within the epidemic areas where Rift Valley fever virus may persist during the interepidemic periods. And in the endemic areas, there may also be intermittent outbreaks, although they tend to be smaller for a number of reasons, particularly the existence of some degree of herd immunity. Also, if we consider the potential public health implications of Rift Valley fever, these will differ a lot often between epidemic and endemic areas. And something that is possibly underappreciated is the potential for adverse public health impact of Rift in endemic areas and during interepidemic periods. There is evidence, for example, emerging of a significant contribution of Rift Valley fever to acute febrile illness in humans in some areas, for example, in southern Mozambique, and this may be the case for many other areas in Africa. One important thing to mention is that risk for Rift Valley fever virus circulation is not necessarily the same as risk for Rift Valley fever outbreaks. And similarly, prediction of areas suitable for Rift Valley fever virus circulation does not necessarily predict areas suitable for outbreaks. In fact, sometimes they are exactly the opposite, in that areas highly suitable for viral circulation are precisely those endemic areas where outbreaks are less likely to occur due to herd immunity and a multitude of other factors. So if we zoom in a little bit to Southern Africa, which I'm most familiar with three of my study sites marked in yellow, we find a distinction between the epidemic areas in the dry central areas of the country and the endemic areas in the northern and eastern, more tropical, low-lying, warmer, high rainfall areas of the country, of the region. So in the dry central interior, very large, very occasional outbreaks can occur, whereas in the tropical areas, very few, if any, outbreaks are reported. And yet viral circulation can occur in many of these areas, sometimes even at a very high level. So for example, in a study area in the central part of the country, in 2015, 2016, about 5 years after the large outbreak in that area, we found a low to moderate level of herd immunity, which was declining in the wake of the outbreak. Whereas at a study site in the tropical coastal low-lying areas of far northern KwaZulu-Natal, we found a very high, or 40 to 50% seroprevalence, indicating a fair degree of herd immunity in an area where no outbreaks had in fact ever been reported. The question arises is what's happening in some of these intermediate areas. In the study area in the northern part of the country, in Limpopo province, we found a fairly low seroprevalence in some areas, indicating the existence of some degree of virus circulation, which was completely undetected. And the same may be true in many other parts of Africa. So my reason for mentioning all this is to show that the objectives of our surveillance with respect to Rift Valley fever will clearly differ depending on the epidemiological context. In other words, whether we are considering an epidemic area or an endemic area, and also whether we are in an interepidemic period or actually experiencing or planning for an epidemic. And along with the epidemic areas, I also include new areas where outbreaks have never occurred and which are also unlikely to be endemic areas. For example, areas outside the African continent. So during the interepidemic period, in an area potentially at risk for an epidemic, one of the most important objectives may be the identification of conditions and risk factors conducive to outbreaks. In other words, prediction. We may also want to try to detect viral circulation at an early stage before a large outbreak occurs, or we may want to assess herd immunity to inform us of the risk of an outbreak should suitable conditions occur. If an epidemic does occur, the focus of surveillance would likely shift towards the early detection of new infected premises or herds, the assessment of the extent and impact of the epidemic, and then later towards assessment of the effectiveness of control measures. In endemic areas, there could be a whole range of valid surveillance objectives, and I've listed just a few of them here. Note that these are just examples of some surveillance objectives, and it's important for each country or area or region to be clear regarding its own objectives in order to select the most appropriate tools. And so I'd just like to highlight the importance of having as much information as possible about what the situation is with regard to Rift Valley fever in your own country or area. Here I've listed the most important categories of surveillance tools. Firstly, predictive tools, which may be as simple as monitoring weather forecasts or notification of the occurrence of flooding in areas considered to be at risk of outbreaks, but also can include dynamic early warning systems incorporating various sources of data. And I think we'll hear a little bit more about this later in the program. Serological surveillance may include cross-sectional surveys, perhaps using samples collected for other purposes, whether they be structured studies or ad hoc sample collections. And these may be useful to assess the current level of herd immunity or to detect hitherto unrecognized Rift Valley fever virus circulation in a population. Here, I must stress the importance of using accurate diagnostic tests, and we'll hear more about those in future presentations. And here I mean particularly a highly specific test, such as the gold standard VNT or virus neutralization test, in order to make conclusions regarding exposure to Rift Valley fever virus, particularly if the prevalence is very low or if it's a new area where the virus has never been reported. But cross-sectional data cannot easily distinguish between historical and ongoing viral circulation, so we need longitudinal serological surveys to provide us with detailed insights into the level of viral circulation in an area and its variation over time. So longitudinal surveillance in sentinel flocks can be a sensitive method for detecting the circulation of Rift Valley fever virus in an area, although it would be difficult using this method to achieve a wide coverage of a region in a cost-effective manner. Entomological surveillance, looking at the mosquito vectors, can take a number of forms, including monitoring of the mosquitoes themselves, mosquito populations, particularly of key species that are known or suspected to be important vectors of Rift Valley fever virus. And I just need to mention here that there's a lack of knowledge concerning exactly which are the important vectors in many areas. It should be noted that that PCR screening of mosquito or mosquito pools in order to detect the presence of virus is not a very sensitive method of detecting Rift Valley fever virus activity. since infection rates in mosquitoes are generally very low and it's difficult to find the virus often. Detection of viruses circulating in the environment using honey or sugar-baited traps to collect and to test expectorated saliva has been found in some situations to be a more sensitive and rapid method for detection of some arboviruses. Although to my knowledge, it's not yet been used for Rift Valley fever. The last type of surveillance tool is syndromic surveillance. And this, in my opinion, is one of the most useful tools for the detection of Rift Valley fever virus activity, whether it be in endemic, epidemic, or in new areas. Small numbers of abortions and neonatal mortalities in domestic ruminants are likely to occur in epidemic and new areas as the earliest sign of Rift Valley fever emergence or introduction. And yet these are often overlooked until the numbers start increasing dramatically. They are also likely to occur in small numbers in endemic areas, but again, are very often overlooked. Participatory approaches and education initiatives could increase the coverage and sensitivity of these methods, and benefits of such syndromic surveillance would include detection of several other important zoonoses. And lastly, the testing of acute febrile human patients at clinics can provide evidence of unrecognized Rift Valley fever virus circulation and can alert us to potential public health impacts in endemic areas and in interepidemic periods as well. So you'll notice that there are not many new or technologically advanced methods here. Technological advances have perhaps been more in the realm of outbreak prediction and in systems for more effective data collection, analysis, and communication of results. Most of the methods for surveillance are not new, but what may need to change is for us to use the existing tools in a more rational way by trying to understand our local situation with respect to Rift Valley fever, then deciding on precise surveillance objectives, and then tailoring the existing methods for our own unique situations. So I've tabulated the various methods for each situation using my own, and I must stress, this is my own subjective assessment of which may be the most suitable methods to use. And this is going to likely change depending on each specific situation. I've primarily considered sensitivity of the method to detect the presence and activity of Rift Valley fever virus in an area, but also the potential for the method to yield useful information regarding the importance and impact of Rift Valley fever in an area. So that's more in the realm of research. So therefore the rankings will depend very much on your own surveillance objectives and assessment of the epidemiological situation in your own country. But what I believe it does show is that syndromic surveillance, particularly for abortions, is likely to be one of the most sensitive and useful tools for Rift Valley fever virus surveillance in many areas. And as I mentioned, it carries many additional benefits in terms of other potentially important zoonotic diseases. So in conclusion, I've listed some points that I consider important. Most importantly, that the selection of surveillance tools for Rift Valley fever virus surveillance should be based and adapted to local context. And it should be supported by as much knowledge as possible of the likely Rift Valley fever epidemiological situation in that area. Also, what I think is important is the development of systems to support multidisciplinary surveillance and to enhance communication between role players and to facilitate dissemination of results and information. And I think more may be said regarding these and other presentations. Lastly, I'd like to appeal for the increased collaboration between those tasked with surveillance and their colleagues in academic and research institutions. This is particularly important when dealing with a disease such as Rift Valley fever, which still poses so many unanswered questions regarding the ecology of the virus and its vectors, the nature of the reservoir systems that support viral circulation, and the maintenance and the public and health and animal health impact of Rift Valley fever virus endemicity, as well as the mechanisms for outbreak initiation, which are in many cases unclear. Wherever possible, surveillance and research activities should be combined in an interdisciplinary One Health approach in order to achieve maximum benefit. Surveillance activities provide ideal opportunities for collection of valuable data to address research questions. And research findings in turn will help to inform surveillance methodology and contribute to more effective surveillance prevention and control. With that, I'd just like to acknowledge some of my collaborators and funders and to thank you once again for the opportunity to present this talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Samson. And it really very fruitful and very informative show. We have a question about the 6 months report in determining the disease status from the countries. Is it decisive, or some verification must be done in order to judge the status of the disease, RVF disease, in certain countries?
I'm sorry, I did not catch that question. Could you please repeat it?
Is it how to judge the disease status in a country, basing the information on the 6 months reported by the country itself? Is there any method to verify the accuracy of this reports before deciding about the true status of the country, or this is not being done yet? You just
I'm not exactly sure what the question is, but I think one issue here is that there is probably a lack of uniformity in methods to actually detect and confirm the presence of the virus in a particular country, and so I'm not sure whether there are standardized steps that one can take in order to verify these. I think each situation will be different. I think one of the important things is, as I did mention, is that in a new area where the virus has never been detected, it's important to confirm the presence of virus circulation using as specific a serological test as possible, or even if possible to obtain direct evidence by molecular methods of the presence of the virus. That would be one of the first steps. And as I said, using syndromic surveillance for detection of possibly previously unrecognized effects on livestock reproduction. In other words, detecting abortions is going to be a very sensitive method of picking up the presence of the virus. I'm not sure whether I answered the question, but
yes, yes, it is about the accuracy of these 6 months reports usually submitted by countries.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think Paulo. Sorry,
Yeah.
Peter. I think Paulo can help us with this, as he is the one responsible for the WAHIS in OIE.
Well, if I may compliment, what happened at headquarter level when we receive a 6-monthly report is we don't publish immediately the report as it is. There is a verification process clearly before publishing the data. Specifically for the case of Rift Valley fever, what we do is, as I said, we have an active search activity. So each day we collect information about Rift Valley fever occurrence in the country. If there is any, and we collect information from media reports, we collect information from, if available, from scientific literature, we collect information from other sources. Actually, the EIUS system is able to collect information from 15,000 different sources. So what we did is a verification process against the possible presence of the disease not reported by the country. Then clearly we cannot go beyond that. But yeah, there is a verification process at least to check if, for example, is a country is reporting a disease as no information, at least to verify against other sources and ask the country in case of any inconsistency.
إذا سمحت لي دكتور طارق.
تفضل دكتور.
أنا أتوقع هذه نقطة مهمة جدا. من خلال اللجنة، لجنة الجيفتاد والدور اللي هي تقوم فيه، أنا أتوقع أحد البرامج المطلوبة والأمراض مرض حمى الوادي المتصدع مثل ما ذكرنا في البداية. طبعا من خطط العمل اللي راح تكون باللجنة هي مراجعة الخطط لكل دولة ومعرفة مستوى التقدم، لكن أن يتضمن المراجعة لخطط كل دولة تقييم الوضع الحالي في الدولة المعنية، وليكن ذلك ذو أولوية عن باقي الأمراض لتخصصية المرض كمرض مشترك وذا خطورة عالية، أن يكون في مدعم بنتائج وتقارير تقيم الوضع ومعرفة مدى الجدية في المكافحة. هذا الأمر مهم جدا حقيقة، وسؤالك مهم جدا عند طرحه والله يا دكتور.
شكرا دكتور إبراهيم. ما في شك إنه no doubt that this is important aspect of control and prevention. There should be very high credibility of the reports about the disease situation and of the epidemiological situation. Thanks, Dr. Ibrahim. Let us keep now our timeline, and our next speaker is Claudia Vitigilio. She will provide a slideshow on early warning systems and the decision support tools, which is very important aspects of control and epidemic prediction also. Claudia works as a disease ecologist and risk modeler with the Animal Health Services, Livestock Production and Health Division in FAO since 2021-2, and on disease risk mapping, modeling, forecasting, and assessment. These diseases include Rift Valley fever, anthrax, and other important diseases like avian influenza. She is also the focal point for the FAO web-based Rift Valley Early Warning Decision Support Tool, RVF DST, as well as for risk modeling and forecasting activities and capacity development in GIS and spatial analysis of FAO Emergency Center for Transboundary Animal Diseases, ECTAD, Emerging Pandemic Threats, which is EPT to Global Health Security Agenda. Claudia has 20 years of experience in spatial analysis and modeling with the FAO headquarters and in the field. Welcome, Claudia. The floor is yours to provide your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thanks a lot. Good morning, everyone. And thanks a lot for giving us this opportunity to present our web-based Rift Valley Fever Early Warning Decision Support Tool, which is an example on how near real-time modeling, risk forecasting, and digital innovation can enhance preparedness and anticipatory action. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, yes, it's clear.
Okay. Great, thank you so much. So anticipating and mitigating the risk of priority zoonotic diseases and emerging and re-emerging infection diseases at the human wildlife license. Yes?
Can you put it in the presentation mode, please?
Yes, it's in the presentation mode, but so it cannot be seen as a presentation mode, so.
No.
We try to reshare. Can you see now?
Yes.
Is it in presentation mode?
Not yet.
Not yet. I have two screens and sometimes it messes up.
Yeah, maybe you can swap the presentation.
Claudia, go to the displays and swap the displays.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that. Let me reshare it. Maybe it's this one. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Sorry for that. Okay, so it's okay now. Okay, thank you and sorry for this inconvenience. So anticipating, it's okay?
Yes.
Yes,
okay.
perfect. Go ahead.
Go on.
Okay, so anticipating and mitigating the risk of priority zoonotic diseases, emerging and re-emerging infection diseases that the human-wildlife livestock interface is very challenging, particularly when dealing with disease patterns that are dynamic and they change in a changing environment, in a changing climate. So an early warning system helps to stay at the left side of this epi curve here, and it provides information on the potential occurrence of known or emerging threats that may evolve into crisis unless early response is undertaken. Its scope is to monitor the environment based on a set of indicators that are disease specific and easy to monitor. An early warning system identifies the first signals, initial signals, and anomalies in those indicators, so to apply preventive measure and reduce the risk of an outbreak that can evolve even an epidemic or pandemic. The early warning system must be cost effective, as we know. At the FAO, we have used information, innovation, technology, and expert knowledge to develop an early warning decision support tool for Rift Valley fever, which is evidence-based and science-based. The tool has enabled Rift Valley fever monitoring and forecasting at regional and national level, thus enhancing early warning and information sharing to trigger early action. The decision support tool has been developed as a proof of concept and then has become a model as it is scalable to other countries, regions, and other diseases. So the Rift Valley fever decision support tool is a web-based tool which integrates near real-time Rift Valley fever risk maps with geospatial data as proxy of Rift Valley fever drivers, including near real-time climate data, expert knowledge, and Rift Valley fever occurrences, to guide informed response to Rift Valley fever at country level. The tool is also based on a One Health guideline document for Rift Valley fever preparedness and response for the target countries that was developed together with stakeholders in workshops and will be published soon. Has been piloted in Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, but is, as I said, scalable to other countries and diseases. It is used to build early warning capacity at country level, validate risk maps on near real time, and also issue alert and warning messages to CBO and with strategic partners such as IGAD, as we have done recently since last year, and to better prevent and control the disease at the regional and national level. So the DST is the result of several studies and projects that FAO has conducted over the years with different donors and strategic partners, including WHO and OIE. And as you can see here, where we see now major milestones and the way forward, between 2007 and 2011, FAO increased its expertise in Rift Valley fever modeling, testing different modeling approaches. In 2012 and 16, FAO adopted and calibrated a dynamic environmental model developed by NASA, particularly by Dr. Nyamba, and started to produce risk maps on a regular basis. In 2017, there was a major milestone with the transition from a desktop to a cloud-based platform, which is the Google Earth Engine platform, which tremendously increased the speed of the processing work of the satellite images, enabling near real-time risk mapping. In 2018, the model was further increased using MODIS at 250 meters and also integrating the outputs of a Dar es Salaam meeting. One of the recommendations of this meeting that was very important for Rift Valley fever was to announce early warning and information sharing to trigger early action. So in 2019, the tool was developed by integrating the dynamic model with expert knowledge on Rift Valley fever epidemiology and information available in paper documents such as the Rift Valley fever decision support framework. This was as a response to that recommendations. In 2020, the tool was integrated into the end-in-end geospatial platform, which is an FAO platform, which has enhanced the interoperability of the geospatial data and application in FAO and also outside FAO. Currently, the DST is used to build capacity in early warning at regional and national level with dedicated trainings. Next year, we plan to increase the accuracy of the model by improving the risk categorization and including additional risk factors such as socioeconomic factors and animal movement to predict the risk of spread. In the coming years, we plan to scale up the tool to other countries and diseases and also include a scenario component to provide donors and stakeholders with scenario analysis showing baseline business as usual and also scenarios based on recommended actions. The model builds upon the dynamic environmental model developed by Dr. Anyamba collaborators, which was calibrated. This model used observed cumulative vegetation anomalies over the past 3 consecutive months as a proxy of vector dynamic and development. Our tool also integrates observed precipitation anomaly over the same time period using NOAA data, forecasted precipitation over the coming 3 months, HANSO forecast up to 6 months, past and current Rift Valley fever outbreaks, which are linked to the FAO EmpressI system, which is a web-based application that provides updated information on global animal health distribution and current threats at national, regional, and global level, as well as with livestock distribution density, which are linked to the FAO gridded livestock of the world, expert knowledge, and it's, as I said, integrating the FAO and the geospatial platform. The model has an average prediction capacity of 2.5 months, ranging from 1 to 5 months, depending on the region of interest, as is shown in this table. So this slide summarizes the DST concept framework and its application. The tool and capabilities are scalable and applicable to other diseases, and also for mapping the human-wildlife livestock interfaces for spillover events. So you can see here that we have integrated this knowledge and innovation in order to then better prevent and control, enhance capacity building, and issue alerts and enhance risk communication. So this is my last slide, which shows the rolling out of the tool and training work plan. The scope of the training is to get familiar with the tool and its functionalities, target One Health audience, and get their feedback to refine the tool. So expected results include the regular use of the tool, enhanced data sharing, networking, collaboration in the region, as well as improved state of vigilance and preparedness in the Eastern African region. But we would like to also extend to the other regions in Africa. And now I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Carl Mortheo, for the live demonstration of the tool. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thanks, Claudia, and welcome, Carl. Yes, welcome.
Thank you.
Go, proceed.
Okay, so let me just share my screen, if I may. Can someone please confirm they can see my screen and hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Seen.
Thank you very much. So as Claudia has said, the Rift Valley Fever Decision Support Tool is accessed through a standard web browser. So there's no installation on your computer. You can access it directly through a standard web browser. This is the entrance page to the Rift Valley Fever Decision Support Tool. And what I'm presented with is a map of the area of interest. So presently, this is the area that is covered by the tool. In fact, let me just go over here and put on some place labels for those that aren't so familiar. So we're covering basically Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. So let me just remove that. And what you're seeing at the moment is a map with some red dots. So these red dots all over the place are the outputs of the model that Claudia was just explaining. So they're basically showing the forecast of the vector amplification. So if I click somewhere on the map, a few things happen. Firstly, I get to see which province I'm in. So in this case, it's Kitui in Kenya. I also get to see the country boundary, and I can see down here a risk of vector amplification. So depending on exactly where I click, I will see, for example, over here, I will see the output of the model. So here we see a risk of vector amplification of yes, with a specific value, and the month of the forecast is June in 2021. Okay, so the other thing that we're able to do is to find out a little bit more about this data. So I can go to about this data, and over here we see the metadata record that describes the process in a little bit more depth than Claudia was presenting right now. So we're going to do a deep dive into that algorithm, and we include an ISO standard geospatial metadata record for other people to connect and reference that data set. Okay, you'll notice also that the data itself it has this time concept, so I can step through to a previous month. So now I'm looking at the forecast that was generated May for the preceding period to April, or indeed I can click along the timeline along the bottom here and see a different time period. Okay, so let's go back to today, and let's click on an area. We're also able to do some analysis. So I'm going to start out with some very simple analysis. So I'm going to do a risk of vector amplification. I'm going to choose this province here. And what it's going to go and do is going to look at the boundaries of this province. And now it's going to create a calculation with the percentage of the land that is at risk for each one of those periods. So I get a start of a risk profile for that area. I can then click on another area. So that's not far enough away. Let's click over here maybe. And I can do something similar. So I'm looking at Narok in Kenya, and I can do a similar thing. And now I can compare the risk profile between the two different areas. The other thing I can do is actually draw an area on the screen, and I can I can give that a name, so I can call it, I don't know, site 1. And now I can come over here and I can do some dynamic analysis. Again, I'm doing this risk of vector amplification. I'm choosing site 1 and off I go. This one will take a little bit longer because it's a custom area, so it's been sent to the backend processing, so it'll take a few minutes for it to be calculated and come on the screen. 1 moment of patience. Okay, so now we see we have this risk comparison against these 3 different areas, the 2 well-defined epidemiological units identified in Kenya, plus this hand-drawn area that I called Site 1. Okay, let me remove that and tidy up a little bit and continue with the tour. The other thing that we're able to do is to look at, for example, the rainfall in the area. So I could pick, let's just pick this area here. I can perform my analysis. And what we're seeing here is for this particular province in Arusha, I'm seeing the long-term average. I'm seeing the last full year and the current progression of 2021, bounded between the upper and lower bounds of the rainfall profile for that province. Another way of looking at this data is to say that I'd like to see it in a cumulative format. So taking the same province just for, and now what we see is the same piece of information, but this time presented to us in a cumulative format. And you can see in this particular province, we are bang on sort of the average that we would expect given the long-term average, and a bit less than last year. Okay, so where does some of this data come from? We can look at the catalog of available data, and in here we have a few different sources of information. So I'm going to drill down just on a few examples today. I'm going to take precipitation. I'm going to take historical precipitation. I'm going to take a monthly figure, and the Z score here, what that means is it's an anomaly, it's a standardized anomaly. So what we're basically doing is looking at the difference in rainfall compared to a typical time period, in this case monthly. So compared to a typical June, this area is much drier. And if I go back to May, you'll see the situation is very different. And overall, it was typically wetter. Again, this is another piece of information that comes into our general understanding of the situation in the country. The other thing we can do is to have a look at the forecast. So let's put a forecast on top of that. So I'm going to add a forecast information, and I'm going to split the screen into 2. And I'm going to put the forecast on the right-hand side, and I'm going to put the historical data on the left-hand side. And now what you should be able to see if I just move this here, so we have the right-hand side. So we'll see that the forecast for August is not that different. There's no big anomalies, but as we move through to October, we're likely to see a lot more rain up here, whereas the historical figures over here, we can compare. So you'll see these two different views of the rainfall situation. Okay, I'm running out a little bit of time here, so let me just speed up a little bit. Let me just take a look at some of the risk factors that we have in here. So I'll very quickly put in the at-risk figures. So let's stick some animals on where the animals are, so we can quickly look at the cattle densities, and then I can together put that with where the humans are, looking at the human densities. Again, I'll put the humans on the left and I'll put the cattle on the right. So now we can start to see these areas where we have a coincidence of humans and cattle in this case. So that gives us another piece in the puzzle for building up our story. So let's remove some of that and continue. And I will very briefly show you some historical data. So let's put some historical data on. So we're looking at here. Let me remove the humans. I'm going to remove the humans, and I'm going to put the vector forecast back on. Okay. So okay, clean that screen up a little bit there. So presently, what we're going to do here is to step through time. So for example, if I go back to, I don't know, 2007, the start of 2007, I pick a date, what you'll see is as I step through the time periods, the map will, 1 second, as I step through the time periods, the map will update to show us where these locations are. Did I turn down the visibility of that one? One moment. So you'll see that each one of these dots represents a reported event. I can click on the specific event. I can see the detailed report on that. So in this case, it was one that was reported from OIE, and it was confirmed in this area. So what we can do is to overlay on top of that the vector amplification to see if there is a coincidence with where the prediction is with where the events are. And in fact, we could even break that down by animal species and see those animal species coming up here. So for example, this was cattle over here. Okay, well, I'm really almost out of time here. So let's just do one last bit of analysis. The other kind of analysis we can do is something that we call a multi-factor radar. And that's basically going through that catalog of information that we've seen earlier and pulling it all out. And it's putting it into this multi-dimension. So we're looking at for that province, if you look at humans, cattle, goats, sheep, the anomaly in rainfall in the past, the area at risk, and the precipitation in the future, we can get this risk profile. And again, we can compare that to other areas. The other thing we'll do before I finish is briefly show you the report. So the other idea we can do is just create these pre-canned, in this case, is a PDF document report, which gives us a succinct summary, which is looking at the various dimensions of information in a printable and ready to access report, showing us the different charts that I was showing you interactively in one printable report. If I have 1 minute more, I will show you one last thing, so we can take a look at. Let's have a look at the land cover classification, and we can also take a look at the elevation model, which is another piece of information that can help us to see how it looks. And we are then able to, for example, put it into a 3D model and then zoom in on an area. So if I look for Kilimanjaro over here, I can now zoom in an area and see the map in a 3D model, and that could be another way of looking at how the data is organized. So I'm out of time here, and I will stop. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl, for this amazing tool, and really we expect this is to revolutionize the data collection and identification of the positive agent. But as this tool seemed to be not complicated, but it needs training and capacity building programs in order to be practiced by the veterinary authorities all over the infected or the endemic areas to bring about the results that is aimed to be reached. Is there any? There is question here. Is there any plans for capacity building programs or training, regular training that in order to enable professional growth for the veterinary cadre in certain countries, so as to use this tool efficiently? And okay, you can answer or you can answer it.
I think Claudia, perhaps if you could answer the question on the
Sure, I will. Thank you so much. Thank you for the questions. Actually, yes, the tool currently, and I see also a question in the chat, is currently password protected, so it's not public. Has been developed, as I said, as a pilot for Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. So at the moment is dedicated to them, and trainings are dedicated to the vets, the epidemiologists. I mean, we have a One Health audience actually to them, but we plan to extend it to other countries as well, because there is a great interest. And we are also working on integrated, enhance this interoperability inside FAO also with the Empresai, because you know that all the disease data comes from the display, what Carl shows comes also from Empresai, and we hope to make it accessible through the upgrade of this system as well in the future, in the near future. Thank you.
Of course, Claudia, this tool is usable for so many other TADs and important diseases can be utilized. Yeah. And what to expect the revolution it will create in diagnosis and in disease traceability and disease information as general? Do you expect after 5 years from now, what do you expect the scene will be?
Well, I think that now we have incredible capacity, and we have so happy to have collaborated with our IT department in FAO, because Carl is our guru, let's say, has developed so many systems, and so we really see that the future will be this integration in artificial intelligence, but also the expert knowledge. So I think that our strength is to have included and incorporated also the validation from the field with the expert and stakeholders, and we want to continue to refine these risk maps and the tool by enhancing this integration, so that at country level and field level they can tune and recalibrate what we see from the top of the atmosphere, as I say, with using remote sensing. So I think that the future will be this, to provide countries and the vets the tools to enable them to monitor and forecast by themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. We proceed now for our next speaker, Catherine Critisosa, is our coming speaker. Catherine is a virologist in the Center for International Cooperation in Agronomic Research for Development, CIRAD. Her topic is advances in the diagnostic tests for Rift Valley fever. The floor is yours, dear Catherine. Welcome. And
thank you very much. Can you hear me very well?
yes, Catherine, you must handle your presentation from your side, okay?
Okay. And can you hear me very well?
Yes, yes.
Okay, can you see the presentation as well?
Yes.
Great.
Go ahead.
So good morning to you all. So first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this OIE webinar for the invitation to give a talk on Rift Valley fever diagnosis. So as we heard earlier this morning, Rift Valley fever is an arthropod. Yes?
Sorry, can you put it in presentation mode, please?
Where is that? I think it is.
If you can go to settings
It
and
should
then
be.
swap.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's not? Is it?
Yes.
Is it better for you?
Not yet. Swap the presentations, please, from the setting up there.
I can try to do that again. Let's see.
No, same in this
can you
screen.
See?
You can, yes, perfect. Now it's okay.
Yes. Now it's okay?
Yes, yes, it's good.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you. So as we heard earlier this morning, Rift Valley fever is an arthropod-borne viral disease of sheep, goats, cattle, and people. So of course, we'll talk about the diagnosis mainly based on the host compartment, meaning animals and human beings. Global diagnosis of Rift Valley fever means field and laboratory diagnosis. Under field diagnosis, I mean differential diagnosis of Rift Valley fever that has to be done with other diseases that cause clinical signs similar to Rift Valley fever in link with ecological investigations. And under ecological investigations, that means the seasonal and the climatic changes that could happen, as well as the environmental conditions that may also be different from one season to another, including rainfalls. Vectors, meaning the abundance and also the diversity, are important to consider, as well as the hosts. And under host, I mean the closeness of Earths and human beings. And under laboratory diagnosis, I will detail the different ways to identify the virus, either by the identification of the virus by itself, or the characterization of the immune response induced by the virus. So several methods, have been developed in order to characterize the virus. I will be detailing some genome detection methods using molecular biology techniques, such as real-time PCR or real-time LAMP techniques, as well as sequencing, Sanger and next-generation sequencing methods. I will talk a little bit also about the rapid diagnostic tests, as well as the virus isolation procedures that could be done from the blood, spleen, liver, as well as the histopathology techniques on tissues and organs. So before I forget, just would like to mention the type of samples that are needed for the appropriate diagnosis of Rift Valley fever. So on live animals and human beings at the febrile stage of the disease, we'll need and we'll play with sera and also heparinase or EDTA blood. Talking about dead animals, including aborted fetuses, then we'll need and we'll work on samples such as spleen, liver, kidney, lymph nodes, heart, blood, and also brain. So now, to better understand the diagnosis of Rift Valley fever, it is important to remember the kinetic of Rift Valley fever infection. There is a first stage of infection, which is the acute phase of infection, starting at day 1 and ending up around day 7 post-infection. And during this early phase of infection, we can detect infectious viral particles in the bloodstream by RT-PCR or different other assays. And there is a second stage of infection, which is the late stage of infection, starting at day 8 or day 10, let's say. And this phase is considered as the antibody production phase, with the first type of IgM produced during the 3 months post-infection. Well, it can be even shorter than 3 months. It can be, 1 month. And then following this IgM production, we will have the IgG production. So now I'm going to talk about the first part of this talk, will be dedicated to the identification of the virus. So just few words about the virus and the characteristics of the virus by itself. So this virus belongs to the order Bunia virilis and the family Phenuiviridae and the genus Phlebovirus. It's transmitted by more than 53 species of mosquitoes and other vectors. And the important thing here to remember is that it's only one single serotype of Rift Valley fever. Also, there are several clades that have been described and that are phylogenetically related. We observe different levels of pathogenicity, and it depends on the strains that are circulating in the countries. The virus is a double-stranded RNA enveloped virus of negative polarity, and it's a segmented virus made of 3 segments: the large segment, the medium segments, and the S segment. So talking about the identification of the virus, I will be here mentioning 5 different ways to identify the virus. Our first one, an ancestor one, is electron and confocal microscopy. The histopathology as a second one, mainly on lesions on liver and also brains of dead animals. And the third one will be the virus isolation by culture. This culture can be done either on in cell culture, like the flask you can see here on this slide, on different type of cells like Vero cells, but also baby hamster kidney cells and different kind of cells. And that can be done also on young mice, like newborn mice. A fourth type of techniques will be based on the antigen antibody reactions, such as the rapid diagnostic test that is just presented here, an immunofluorescence assay. And the fifth type of techniques that I will be developing is the molecular biology ones, such as real-time RT-PCR and next generation sequencing. So I do not have the time to detail all the techniques, so I decided to focus on 3 of them for the identification of the virus. The first one will be the rapid diagnostic test, which is a lateral flow device based on the antigen antibody reaction. And here I just mentioned the sensitivity and the specificity of one of the tests that has been developed. The sensitivity has been tested on 25 different strains of different origins with a level of 100%. The specificity has been evaluated on negative samples, as well as 9 different viral strains inducing Rift Valley fever-like clinical signs. This type of test can be useful as it is a point-of-care diagnostic tool useful to confirm an outbreak. But of course, it's just a confirmation. I mean, this type of test needs to have confirmation with other molecular biologic, other molecular biology tools in the future. Second part I would like to detail to you is the different real-time PCR and LAMP techniques that have been developed. So on this slide, I mentioned the different papers that have been that have been published on the different genes. Remember, I told you the virus is 3 segments based virus. And as you can see on this slide, at least 2 conventional PCR have been already developed in the past, about 15 years or even 20 years ago. And now a lot of real-time RT-PCR have been developed on the 4 different genes as well. So those ones are either based on Tachman probe or cybergrain methods. But all of them have different levels of sensitivity and specificity. And I think it's good to use a combination of some of them just to confirm, when you have the disease as, for the first time in the country, for example. And there is also, I just wanted to mention also one.
أذكر اختبار البي سي ار يعني ليس باختبار البي سي ار معذرة بل اختبار البيانات بشكل فوري يمكن أن يكون أسلوبا سريعا أقل من 30 دقيقة ويستخدم أيضا في الميدان. أخيرا فيما يتعلق بالتعرف على الفيروس.
J'aimerais mentionner que la génération, le séquençage de nouvelles générations
assess the genetic diversity that may occur among strains in the different outbreaks that we have globally in Africa and in West Africa and the eastern part of Africa, as well in the Arabic Peninsula. And this next generation sequencing are helpful also to trace the origins of the outbreak, and they are adaptable to high throughput strategy platform. So I mentioned here several papers that you are welcome to have a look on. So now let's talk about the second phase of infection. Remember, I told you the first phase is about 6 to 7 days, and it's followed by the second phase of infection with the production of IgM for at least 1 month post-infection, or let's say between 1 and 2 months. And this stage is followed by IgG. So in order to identify the production of antibody, we have 4 different ways, 4 different type of techniques, I would say. The first one, and the very high specific ones that is really recommended and that is really useful in case of outbreaks or in case of new circulation of the pathogen if in one country that has never experienced Rift Valley fever outbreaks, is a virus neutralization test. It's a highly specific and highly recommended test. A second one will be the immunofluorescence assays that are also highly specific. Third one will be the, I don't know what's wrong with that. The third one will be the ELISA. And, talking about ELISA, we have homemade ELISA as well as commercially available ELISA. Some of them are focused on the IgM detection, some others on the IgG detection. And I would like also to talk as a first type of techniques, the bead-based multiplex assays that are readable on Luminex reader or the Legendplex multiplex assays. Those ones are coming now in the laboratories and are very helpful. I would tell you why. So here I decided to sum up on this table the advantages and the disadvantages of those 4 techniques able to identify antibodies. So the virus neutralization test and the immunofluorescence assay have the advantages to be highly specific, and they can be useful for early detection of the infection. The disadvantages of those 2 techniques is that they require BSL-3 facilities because we are using live virus culture for those techniques. And of course, it requires a cell culture equipped lab, meaning incubator, liquid nitrogen, freezers, and so on. Talking about ELISA, the good thing about those ELISA is that we, when running those ELISA, we use safe reagents, either inactivated antigens, especially the ones developed by the South African colleagues, Janus, for example, and also the the ELISA developed by recombinant and developed on the N recombinant proteins. So those ones are really safe. The disadvantage is that only few of them are commercialized, and there are a lot of differences in terms of specificity and sensitivity, depending on the kit, the manufacturer, and sometimes also, the animal species that are going to be diagnosed on those kits.
You have 2 minutes on this.
Yeah. And the bead-based multiplex assays. So the good thing about those one is that we can investigate several pathogens of interest at the same time in one single reactions. At least 13 different pathogens. So that could be a very good advantage. The disadvantage is that there was no commercial available kit, and it requires in-house development. And I cannot finish this slide. This is the last one, but I can't finish my talk without talking about safety measures. As I said, it's Rift Valley fever is an enveloped virus. It can be inactivated by formol, beta-propiolactone, for example, and also sodium hypochlorite. And it can be inactivated with a pH below 6.2. And when incubating at 3 hours for during at 56 degrees, well, just wanted to mention that it's very important to work, if you have the possibility to work on under a biosafety level 3 laboratory or cabinet, to wear masks, glasses, and gloves when you want to isolate the virus, run neutralization tests, and do some RNA extraction from field strains. And just finishing this talk about the take-home message is to use the appropriate tests, either viral genome detection or antibody detection, depending on the type of investigation that is planned. And finally, I wanted to mention the importance of external quality assessment, like ring trials, when we want to evaluate the sensitivity and the specificity of each of the techniques that you would like to run in your own labs. And of course, the reinforcement of a network to face Rift Valley fever outbreaks together, meaning the characterization of the circulating strains, is very important. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Catherine. It's really interesting about the diagnostic test, and concluded by very valuable recommendations. And now we are behind the screen, and we have the pleasure or the honor to introduce our colleague, who is one of the working team to organize this webinar, Dr. Shadia Hounous. She is the Regional One Health Officer for Africa, OIE. And her topic, Shadia will be discussing the One Health multi-stakeholder coordination mechanism, and specifically in RVF control. Welcome, Shadia, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Tarek. I will share my screen now. Can you confirm that you see it in presentation mode?
This is clear. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not in the presentation mode.
Not in presentation mode.
Okay, that's 1 minute. And now?
Not yet. Yes, now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is it okay?
Yeah, Shadia, go ahead.
Good. Okay. You could enlarge the screen because we see the background of your computer. So it's full screen. It could be bigger. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. I would like to talk to you about One Health and how it's important to use this approach for zoonotic control and management, and give you an examples of what OIE is doing in this regard, and especially for Rift Valley fever. So what's One Health? One Health is a concept that is summarized as an idea that had been known for more than a century, that human health and animal health are interrelated and interdependent. and they are bound by the health of the ecosystem in which they exist. For us in OIE, we envisioned this concept and we implemented it as a collaborative global approach to understand the health, the risk for humans and for animals. And I'm sorry, the presentation is moving alone. Just give me 1 second, please.
Okay, don't worry, go ahead.
Is it possible? You can see it now?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Shadi, go ahead.
Okay. Just 1 second. It's mine. Okay. Let's try again. Okay, so for us, the One Health approach refers to the designing and implementing the programs, the policies, the legislation, and the research in a way that enable the multi-sector and the multi-stakeholders to come together to communicate and work together to achieve public health outcomes for all. Now, if we talk about why it's important. We know the fact behind the One Health approach. Some of them were presented by Dr. Dino from FAO in the welcoming speech, that majority of the pathogen, either for existing pathogens for human diseases or for emerging infectious disease, they are originated in animals. We also know that 80% of the pathogens that are of concern for bioterrorism, they are also originated in animals. Moreover, we know that these health risks, they affect our food safety and food security, they affect our environment, and they affect our economy. And we know that around 1 billion people around the world, they depend on farming and livestock for their sustenance and for their livelihood. So if we are to use the One Health approach to address these health risks, we need to understand the drivers behind the disease emergence. And we know that the underlying causes of pandemics are the same global environmental changes that cause biodiversity loss. They are land use changes, including uncontrolled expansion of agriculture and intensive farming. And we know that deforestation, mining, and infrastructure development also risk factors for emergence of zoonotic diseases. We know also that climate change play a major role in this, and one of them is about the abundance and the spread of the mosquitoes that are the vectors to transmit Rift Valley fever. We know also that exploitation of wild species and illegal and unregulated wildlife trade also are risk factors for zoonotic emergence. So all these drivers, they have created the perfect storm for spillover events from wild animals to domestic animals and to humans. And that's why we need to adopt the One Health approach at all levels of decision makings to take into account those risk factors and to take into account the long-term cost and consequences of our human actions and development projects. Now, what we are doing in the UN since 2004 and the development of the Manhattan Principle for the One Health, One World, One Health. And in 2010, we established the tripartite which is the collaboration between the three agencies, FAO, OIE, and WHO. They came together to share the responsibility and to coordinate global activities to address the health risk at the interface. And their focus is on prevention and control of the emergence of infectious disease. And to do so, they focus their support on national services and building the existing infrastructure at country levels and local levels, and focusing on good governance and national health system strengthening instead of short to medium term and ad hoc interventions. We also support countries to adopt and comply with the international standards and codes. Now, in 2018, we came again together and renewed our commitment and our collaborations and expanded the focus from the three priority zoonotic diseases to a large host of emerging and endemic zoonotic diseases, AMR, and also strengthening the health system in the context of the One Health approach. Now, most recently, we are expanding again the tripartite collaboration to include the UN environmental programs, so we can enhance the environmental dimensions of the One Health approach, and we can collaborate and use the multilateral environmental agreements and the partners that are working in this sphere, especially the national and environment and wildlife health authorities. Now, I just want to give you one example of OIE project that using the One Health approach to tackle viral hemorrhagic fevers, including the Rift Valley fever. And this is the EBO-CIRCE projects. The aim is to strengthen the wildlife early detection system in 10 countries in West and Central Africa using the One Health approach, so we can prevent the spillover events of Ebola and 4 hemorrhagic fevers. These are Marburg, Rift Valley fever, Crimean Congo, and Lassa fever. And to do so, we are supporting the countries to build the institutional and the One Health capacity through teaching and training. We are also supporting the national authority to reinforce their zoonotic disease surveillance protocol through the field investigation and the lab strengthening. And we're also working to increase community awareness of zoonotic diseases. More information is provided in our website and the link in this presentation that will be available to you after the webinar. Now, also one of the critical vulnerabilities to One Health that has been identified by member states, it's the lack of attention to wildlife health management and the inadequate integration of animal health, wildlife animal health to the One Health strategies. And that's why in response to this, the OIE launched its wildlife health framework this year in our general sessions. We are aiming through this to improve the ability of our members to manage the risk of pathogen emergence and also their transmission from the wildlife at the interface between human, animal, and ecosystem. While at the same time, we are trying to protect our wildlife and our biodiversity.
Shadi, you have 1 minute.
Okay, sure, I will finish soon. And our colleague Paulo has mentioned the importance of sharing of information through our WAHES system. We also work to integrate the wildlife across all of our core programs and activity that are relevant. We have some achievements so far through a technical item on this that we presented in our general sessions. And we have also adopted a resolution on how the OIE can support the vet services to achieve One Health resilience, including through the implementation of this wildlife health framework. Now, just my last slide about showing you an example of a studies to show the benefit of using the One Health approach for Rift Valley fever in particular. And this study was conducted by EcoHealth Alliance in 2018. And it shows clearly that coordinated priority investigations between the One Health sectors, all of them working together, can yield higher statistical power to show that important public health relations as compared to the siloed investigation by each sector alone or the post ad hoc analysis. Likewise, the study demonstrated that we can have a cost saving if we use the One Health approach up to 35% of the cost of the project. And we have similar results also from the World Bank reports that showed the 10 to 30% saving from One Health disease surveillance, either in transportation or communication costs in low and middle income countries, in all scenarios of pathogen prevalence in the countries. So in conclusion, we know that multi-sectoral coordination is essential to control and to manage health risk at the interface between animal, human, and the environment. But this will require from us to have a well-structured and resilient health system that prioritize and focus on prevention. OIE support strongly this multi-sectoral coordination and using the One Health approach. And we are working with our member state to find ways to put this concept and approach into practice at both the political level and the practical level at the countries. So thank you very much. And we are looking forward to working with you to advance the One Health approach for Rift Valley fever control, but also for all of the health risk at the interface. Thank you.
Thanks, Shadia, for the good, very nice presentation. It is really significant and important for the collective efforts to confront diseases and combat their effect. Now we move to our last speaker, Dr. Stephanie Jane Thaler. She is a technical advisor in Africa CDC. Stephanie will discuss advances in public health, prevention and control of Rift Valley fever. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, hello everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? And hopefully you can.
Yes, and it is in the presentation mode also.
Okay, wonderful. All right, great to hear. So I know I'm your last presenter, keeping you from the end of this, so I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. Thank you guys so much for inviting Africa CDC to be a part of this important webinar. And today, as you mentioned, I'll be speaking about the importance of One Health promotion in the public health sector for the prevention and control of zoonotic diseases like Rift Valley fever. All right. So as many of you know, Rift Valley fever is a viral disease that has the biggest impact on animal health, food security, economic livelihoods. But one thing to also keep in mind is that the zoonotic disease affects public health and can lead to severe and deadly disease in about 2% of those that are infected. And while the majority of infected humans are asymptomatic or exhibit only mild flu-like disease, for those who do develop more severe disease, there is currently no treatment beyond supportive care, and there are no commercially licensed vaccines to prevent the disease in humans. The clinical manifestations in those that are symptomatic vary broadly and affect many different organ systems, including the liver, kidney, brains, and the virus can also impair vision and coagulation, which leads to the hemorrhagic signs that are seen. This makes Rift Valley fever very difficult to diagnose clinically, which could also lead to further complications and poor outcomes if supportive care in those impacted is delayed. The following clinical guide has been proposed to help healthcare professionals identify early and appropriately triage those infected with Rift Valley fever virus during an outbreak to help reduce the poor clinical outcomes that are associated with delayed supportive care and severe disease. However, it's well known that human cases are often detected in the healthcare setting when the virus has already spread out of control among the livestock populations. And this is why it's so important that coordinated surveillance is in place at the human-animal environmental interface for early detection and control of the disease in the animal population before cases are able to spill over into the human population. To promote the One Health approach in national public health institutes and ministries of health for addressing priority zoonotic diseases like Rift Valley fever, Africa CDC has developed a framework targeting One Health coordination, coordinated surveillance, diagnostic capacity and laboratory networks, coordinated response efforts, as well as multi-sectoral workforce. As part of this One Health framework, we discussed the importance of coordinated surveillance for zoonotic diseases, especially event-based surveillance, which can be used to enhance existing indicator-based surveillance efforts and strengthen a country's early warning and response efforts. Since 2019, Africa CDC has been conducting event-based surveillance at the continental level for situational awareness of the various public health events impacting the continent and to support member states in their response efforts as needed. And we monitor multiple sources on a daily basis, including those reporting animal health events, as these can be a precursor for events that could occur in the human population. Africa CDC developed an event-based surveillance framework to help support member states with establishing event-based surveillance at the community level, within health facilities, and subnationally or nationally with the use of tools like hotlines and by conducting media scanning. Similar to what Paolo had mentioned earlier, Africa CDC also uses EIOS to do this media scanning work. This framework encourages member states to pull in information from various sources, including the community, health facilities, and the animal or environmental health sectors to reinforce existing indicator-based surveillance efforts and detect early potential events like Rift Valley fever. Signals commonly associated with Rift Valley fever can be used to help detect the disease early in the community to allow for an appropriate and timely response to help control an outbreak. For instance, monitoring the weather forecasts of heavy rains and sudden increases in vector populations can warn a possible outbreak in the animal population. And teams to vaccinate vulnerable livestock and environmental regions. I don't know if somebody can mute I'm hearing folks talk through. I don't know if somebody can mute that one.
Is the dear audience silent?
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
We did thank you.
No worries. So, but yeah, my second point. So monitoring for sudden deaths, abortion in hoofstock populations could also flag an immediate response in the animal health sector and alert the public health sector to start monitoring for human cases, especially in the at-risk populations. And then lastly, monitoring for clusters of people with flu-like symptoms or other more severe signs within the community and at healthcare facilities can also offer a last stage alert of a Rift Valley fever outbreak in communities that may be lacking environmental or animal health surveillance. So this figure shows how by taking a One Health approach and implementing event-based surveillance, information is detected from the various sources across multiple sectors, verified, reported, and then acted on according to risk level from the community to the national level and back to support a country's early warning and response efforts. And this image depicts an epi curve across the wildlife, domestic, animal, and human populations for a generic zoonotic disease. But a figure like this can be used to describe an outbreak of Rift Valley fever, where wildlife and insect reservoirs transmit the disease into domestic animal populations, where it's amplified and then has the potential to spill over into the human population. And ideally, if signals are picked up early, verified and acted on accordingly at the earliest stages of the outbreak, then a situation depicted in this figure will hopefully more appropriately look like the one that's depicted here, where the number of cases in both the domestic animal and human populations are minimized. For a disease like Rift Valley fever, it's paramount that it's picked up as early as possible, especially before it gets into the human population, as the most effective prevention across all populations is still vaccinating vulnerable hoof stock.
الأمر الأفضل بالطبع دائما هو توفير لقاح
That not only are human cases averted, but that the overall impact on the animal health, food security, and livelihoods are minimized. Thank you guys so much for having Africa CDC partake in this webinar. And we welcome all of you to review the frameworks and guidance documents that we shared here today, and happy to take any questions. Thank you all.
Thanks, Stephanie, for a very informative show. And now I ask the audience, there will be a poll. We want to engage you in selecting the upcoming topics or issues for the next year workshop on RVF. So we are going to launch a poll, and you can select just one choice, so as to be part of our decision in designing the coming forum and workshop. Thanks for taking this poll, and after the poll we can go for the question and answer. If anybody want to ask one of the speakers, he can raise his hand, and we can proceed with the answer. In case you have question for today's topics, you can send it also, and we can for the designated speaker, and we can manage to get you to get the asking person the answer for his questions later. Thank you very much. Still, we have 1 minute to end the poll. Please hurry up your answer if possible. Yes, Mohammed, you can unmute your. After the end of the poll, you can unmute and go ahead. After the end of the poll, please. Okay, now. Alaikum salam. Tfaddal, Mohammed.
I am Muhammad Qasim. Thanks for all. And I am Muhammad Qasim, virologist at the Ministry of Environment, Water and Agriculture, Saudi Arabia. My question is that, is there any test of ELISA or any type of ELISA that can differentiate between the antibodies originated from vaccine from the antibodies originated from natural infection?
You mean for DIVA? DIVA, yani?
Yes, I mean for
DIVA
DIVA.
test?
Test.
Yes, and you can see the if Claudia is available. This can be answered by Claudia, who's delivered the lecture about diagnostic tests. Claudia, are you available?
Catherine.
Catherine.
No,
I
Catherine.
think Catherine is.
Yeah. Sorry, Catherine. Yes, she's
Thank-
around. Yes.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, Dr. Mohamed Youssef. Yeah, I answered actually in the chat to this question. You know, up to now, most of the vaccines that are administered in the field in the different countries that are experiencing Rift Valley fever outbreaks are live attenuated vaccines, meaning there are not yet, vaccines that are based on viral proteins or that are produced in, other kind of vectors like adenoviruses or capripox viruses. So up to now, there are no available type of tests that are able to differentiate between vaccinated and infected animals. So I don't know if some of the colleagues that are here in the audience, like Jeroen or like Peter Thompson, can add up on this. But now we are only using. I mean, I don't know in your country, Mohammed, what type of vaccines you're using, but most of the countries are using live attenuated vaccines, and so far we don't have the possibility to have DIVA test. As you know, DIVA test will be focused on specific viral proteins that are immunologically, important and of course useful.
May I briefly also comment on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's obviously a very good point to address, but it's also a very difficult thing to really accurately reply on. So it is correct that there's currently no DIVA test that can be accompanied by current vaccines, but it's also very, very important to really consider how you would apply a DIVA test for a disease like Rift Valley fever, especially for transport. Also taking into account the role of vectors, but also the fact that if you have antibodies in infected animals, then they are highly likely to be protected, or at least have very low risk of infection. So I think that quarantine, for example, is currently at least the best way to go for export, and of course also following the current OIE regulations that are already out there. That doesn't mean that the DIVA test will not be useful, and there's a lot of work being done on that, but at this moment it's not an option, unfortunately.
I think Peter also would like to comment.
Mohammed, if you are you satisfied with these answers, Dr. Mohamed Youssef?
Yeah, wallahi, not yet, because I am living here in a place where we have a live vaccine, attenuated live vaccine as a routine. So we get, when you get positive sample, you don't know, is it a real
infected or vaccine? Yes. So this is traditional problem, and just minimize the efficiency of vaccination campaigns and lead to unnecessary losses. And no doubt that DIVA is a very important technique to arrive at a correct and accurate diagnosis.
May I answer just one brief comment? If I would now have to import animals from any country that could have Rift circulation, I would rather import a seropositive animal than a seronegative animal. This is something to consider, because a seronegative animal could still be infectious. A seropositive animal is very unlikely to be infectious, but that's just a practical comment for now.
Yeah, I agree with that, John.
So it is very difficult to get the full animal seropositive. Very difficult to get 100% of seropositive of imported animals.
Okay, Dr. Mohammed, you can we can talk about further about this in tomorrow session maybe, and it is it's a chance for other. I'm giving a chance for other participants. Dr. Ahmed Isa.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tarek, and thank you for
الصوت يا دكتور أحمد الصوت ما واضح. دكتور أحمد, the voice is not clear.
Okay, I will. Thank you very much. What about now? Is it okay?
Yes, it is okay. Go ahead.
Very good. As to the my question is, can we really use commercially available ELISA kits for trading? Because and also, what about specificity and sensitivity? Another information I got from one of the participants is seropositive animals are, they are not going to get infected, and also they are not going to transmit the disease. That means it is safe if the animal for export has antibody. If it is seropositive, that means this is what I am thinking from long before this. Seropositive animal will not get infected and will not transmit the disease also. Thank you, Dr. Gero, and I'm really interested. My question for Catherine is, what about the specificity and sensitivity of commercially available competitive ELISA kits? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. So I can put in the chat the papers that we've published with Jeroen, like we did a ring trial several years ago to assess the specificity and the sensitivity of some of those kits, and it's really high. It's between 80 and 85% for both. So it's really high. The question is, we have also to remind here that the IG, it's important to, as Jeroen and Peter said, it's really important to consider exporting or importing seropositive animals. And when I'm talking about seropositive, it means IgG positive animals, not IgM, of course, because you know that IgM infected animals, they are they were recently infected, for the past 1 or 2 months. So of course, if you import IgG animals, then it's safe for the country. The country that is importing. I don't know if I answered correctly, or if you would like to have, if you are not happy with the answer.
It's quite clear. Dr. Rogers Kala, welcome.
Thank you, sir, for giving me this platform. I just wrote my question there, but let me say it. I'm from Uganda, Ministry of Agriculture. I would like to know, first of all, which kind of vaccines are compatible with the DIVA test, because she said the live attenuated vaccines cannot be used with the DIVA test. So which kinds of vaccines can be used with the DIVA test? Thank you.
I think Corticus can provide answer to this.
Yeah, thank you very much again. So my colleagues are welcome also to answer to that question. That's a very good question, because so far, there are a lot of different vaccines that are currently under development, but that are not commercially available, that are based on viral proteins, like especially the glycoproteins of the virus. And those ones are either expressed in a baculovirus or in adenovirus or in any capripox viruses. And like MVA as well. So there are several publications of colleagues that are really that worked on that, and the vaccines are okay, but they are not commercially available because of course they will be more expensive to be developed and to be produced. But those ones will be, I think, important and could be used for DIVA tests. But it really depends on why do you want to have a DIVA test and what is it for,
Yes, may I comment on that as well? So
yes,
I think this is also the reason why when we wrote the current chapter on RIFT, the OIE terrestrial manual chapter, it was mentioned that DIVA is an advantage of vaccines. It could be an advantage, for example, for epidemiological studies, but it should not restrict the marketing also of novel vaccines. Precisely because of this reason. So it has to be carefully considered exactly why do you want to use a DIVA test, because it sounds very attractive, but looking into practice, it could really complicate transport actually. So it's meant to facilitate it, but it could also complicate it, because if people refuse, so obviously you will get false positive, false negative results, and especially both can be actually quite detrimental for transport. So that's what I want to stress to the whole group, to think about this carefully. But I also want to note that tomorrow I will present 3 vaccines that are very far in development, and one is actually developed by colleagues of ours, or not colleagues, but you could also say competitors. I'm not involved in the development of this vaccine, but that can theoretically be used as a DIVA vaccine. And this is based on the ChAdOx, the chimpanzee adenovirus, that's also being used as a vaccine for COVID. So there's opportunities there, but again, please think about this carefully on the national level. And also, this also goes out to OIE to also keep sharp on this topic, please.
Thanks, Jorion, for your comments. Thanks all colleagues, speakers, and all of the audience for your presence and for your interactive participation, which is highly appreciated and valued by us. We are looking to have you tomorrow on board also for the second part of our webinar, which is in the same timing. We conclude now and wish you all the best. Till we see you tomorrow, all the best. Thank you.